The boarding pass was torn in two before a single question was asked. An 11-year-old black girl, standing alone, denied without explanation. What the gate agent didn't realize was that the girl's mother owned the entire airline. For Nova Bennett, a wide-eyed girl with mahogany skin and careful braids dotted with soft pink beads, this wasn't just any trip. It was her first ever flight, and she was flying solo. She stood at gate C-14, the toes of her sneakers barely brushing the yellow line painted on the floor. Her gaze stayed locked on the monitor above. Sunport Air Flight 712. On time. The airport buzzed with noise, but Nova heard only her heart. In her lilac backpack were the essentials: a sketch pad, a small metal tin filled with colored pencils, a squished peanut butter and honey sandwich, and a carefully folded note from her mother. "Look out the window, my love. The clouds don't judge. They just carry you." It had been scribbled in her mom's handwriting just before the final hug goodbye. Her mother, Camille Bennett, wasn't just any parent. She was the CEO and founder of Sunport Airlines, a fact few would guess, judging by her soft jeans and curls pulled into a low twist. Camille didn't seek attention. She believed in impact, not image. She'd boarded the flight early under a different name. Quietly, she wanted to see how her airline treated people, especially at Gate C-14, which had received troubling, subtle complaints over the past few months. Not blatant racism, but enough that Camille knew what to look for. Nova didn't know any of this. She only knew that her hands felt sweaty as she stepped forward with her boarding pass. She offered it to the agent like it was made of glass. The woman behind the counter, Glenda Marks, early 50s, pale, with a stiff bun and silver hoop earrings, barely glanced at Nova. She didn't read the name. She didn't scan the barcode. She just looked. "You here with someone?" Glenda asked, voice flat but not unkind. "No, ma'am," Nova said politely. "I'm traveling by myself. My mom already checked me in." Glenda's lips pressed into a thin line. She took the slip of paper from Nova and stared at it without truly seeing. "You sure this is the right gate, sweetheart?" "Yes, Flight 7112 to South Point City," Nova replied. Still, Glenda didn't scan it. "Where's your guardian?" Nova hesitated. She already boarded. She went ahead. "You people," Glenda muttered under her breath. Nova stiffened. "What?" But Glenda didn't repeat it. Instead, she held the boarding pass at arm's length, like it was a fake dollar bill. She squinted at it. Then she said, "You can't just print something at home and expect to get on a plane, kiddo. It's real," Nova insisted. "My name's on the list. I have the email confirmation." "I've seen this before," Glenda said, cutting her off. "Fake tickets. Kids trying to sneak on. Happens more than you'd think." "Some of who?" Nova asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Glenda finally looked at her, not kindly, not with curiosity. Just looked. "I'm going to have to keep this," she said, and in one motion, tore the pass straight down the middle. A soft gasp escaped Nova's throat. People waiting behind her shifted. One person muttered something, but no one stepped forward. "There," Glenda said briskly. "Take a seat. We'll get someone to sort this out." "I didn't do anything wrong," Nova said, blinking fast to keep the tears from falling. "You're making a scene," Glenda snapped. "Don't be dramatic." Nova turned slowly, searching for help. No one met her eyes. Even the older man in the blue ball cap, who'd smiled at her earlier now, looked away. Then Glenda raised her voice. "TSA, we have a situation here." A younger airline attendant stood a few feet away. Maybe early 30s, tall, mixed race, eyes full of hesitation. His name badge read, Jalen. "She's on the list," he said quietly, approaching. "I checked her in myself about an hour ago. Everything matched." Glenda gave him a sharp look. "Did you verify ID?" "She's 11, Jalen said, puzzled. "She doesn't look 11, Glenda replied. Jalen's brows drew together. "What's that supposed to mean?" Glenda didn't answer. She folded her arms. Nova reached into her hoodie pocket and closed her fingers around her mom's note. She didn't read it. She just held it, like something to hold her steady. A TSA officer appeared moments later, a large man with mirrored shades and a slow, steady chew of gum. He scanned the space, eyes bouncing between Nova and Glenda. "What's going on?" "Possible fake boarding pass?" Glenda said. "No guardian. Refusing to cooperate." "I'm not," Nova whispered. The officer crouched slightly to Nova's level. "Name?" "Nova Bennett." He tapped on a tablet. A pause. Then his gaze lifted. "Camille Bennett?" he asked. "Yes, sir. That's my mom." He stood upright. "She's on the manifest. First class. Registered for unaccompanied minor escort. Everything checks out." Glenda's face twitched. "That can't be right." "It is right," the officer said. "That ticket was valid. Shouldn't have been destroyed." Jalen stepped closer again. "She followed every protocol. I confirmed it all." Glenda looked like she might object. But then, a woman's voice rang out from beyond the barrier. "Is there a reason my daughter isn't on that plane?" Heads turned. The crowd shifted. Camille Bennett stepped forward, not with anger, but with quiet gravity. The kind of presence that didn't beg attention, but demanded it. Glenda paled. "I wasn't told." "You weren't supposed to be," Camille interrupted smoothly. "I stayed behind on purpose. I needed to know how she'd be treated when no one was watching." Nova stepped toward her mother. Finally, the tears fell. "She said my ticket was fake," Nova whispered. "She said people like me make things up." Camille's face didn't change, but her voice did. "Did you scan her name?" No, but did you check the manifest?" "I didn't think I needed to." "You didn't think," Camille replied. "You assumed." Camille Bennett stepped forward, not with raised voice or dramatic gestures, but with the quiet weight of a woman who had walked into far too many rooms where she wasn't expected, but still stood tall. Her presence didn't burn. It chilled. Glenda Marks stiffened instantly. "I wasn't informed." "You weren't meant to be," Camille said, voice steady. "I stayed back intentionally. I needed to see how my daughter would be treated when no one was watching." Nova moved closer, eyes brimming. This time, the tears broke free. "She said my boarding pass was fake," Nova whispered. "She said people like me make things up." Camille didn't blink. She didn't waver. Her focus was locked on Glenda. "Did you scan her name?" "No," Glenda admitted quietly. "Did you check the manifest?" "I didn't think it was necessary." "You didn't think," Camille said. "You assumed." Glenda crossed her arms tightly. "I've been doing this for 18 years, and that's how long your bias has had room to take root," Camille responded sharply. A hush fell over gate C-14. Then, a voice from the waiting area spoke up. "I saw everything," said a woman, standing slowly. "That little girl was calm, polite, respectful. She didn't do a single thing wrong." Color rose in Glenda's face. "I didn't know who she was," she muttered, trying to regain composure. "That's the issue," Camille said. "It shouldn't matter who she is." The TSA officer standing nearby crossed his arms. "Ma'am, I'll be filing a report. I've already requested a supervisor." Nova still held the torn boarding pass, two halves crumpled in her small hands. Camille reached out, gently wrapping her fingers over her daughter's. "We'll get you a new one," she said softly. "But she looked at me like I didn't belong," Nova said, her voice cracking. "Like I wasn't really 11. Camille's jaw tightened. "I'll handle this." And in that moment, everyone watching, whether they admitted it or not, realized this wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. Camille placed one hand lightly on Nova's shoulder, her other still resting loosely at her side, her phone untouched. The gate crowd pretended not to stare, but they were watching. Some already had their phones out, screens dim, camera apps open, waiting. No one wanted to be first to speak, but everyone wanted receipts. The TSA officer had stepped back, murmuring into his earpiece. Jalen, the younger employee, stood protectively near Nova, arms folded, eyes unwavering. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His quiet presence was enough, a kind of silent shield. Camille didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She looked at Glenda again, as if giving her one more chance to say something, anything meaningful. But Glenda said nothing. Her lips were pressed into a thin, pale line. Her arms stayed crossed, like she was holding on to being right, even as everything around her shifted. A few moments later, the supervisor arrived. He was in his late 40s, with a sharp suit, clean-shaven jaw, and a posture that said he'd seen things, but not often in such public view. His badge read, Leon Rivera, Terminal Operations. He took in the scene quickly. His gaze swept from Nova's torn ticket to Glenda's stiff stance. Then, finally to Camille, who stood like someone who had built empires, but still bore the armor of a mother. "I'm Leon Rivera," he said clearly. "Can someone explain what happened?" Camille remained perfectly still. "Your employee accused my daughter of carrying a fake boarding pass," she said evenly. "She tore it up in front of her. Didn't check her name. Didn't scan the barcode. My daughter was properly registered as an unaccompanied minor. Everything had already been confirmed." Leon turned to Glenda. "Is that accurate?" Glenda hesitated. Her eyes flicked nervously toward Jalen. "She came alone. Didn't have ID. I've seen fake tickets before. I made a judgment call." "Did you verify her name?" Leon asked. "No." "Did you scan the barcode?" "It didn't look right." "But you didn't check?" Glenda stayed silent. Leon didn't raise his voice either, but his words held weight, and Glenda looked away. Nova fidgeted slightly. The two halves of the ticket still sat in her palms. Camille noticed. She reached down and took them from her. "We'll keep these," she whispered, "just so we don't forget." She straightened and looked Leon in the eye. "I want this documented. I want a full review of the gate's surveillance footage, audio included. This wasn't just a policy mistake. This was profiling. And I have spent years building a company that stands for more than this." Leon tilted his head slightly. "Camille Bennett?" She gave a small nod. "Founder and CEO." "Yes. And this is my airline. But today, I'm not standing here as an executive. I'm standing here as a mother. A mother whose child was made to feel like a criminal because of the color of her skin." There was no applause, no dramatic gasps, just silence that sank deep and stayed. And Glenda, who had begun the morning with power in her posture, looked smaller now. Not because she'd discovered who Camille was, but because of how clearly she'd failed to see the person right in front of her. Finally, Jalen stepped forward again. "She did everything right," he said, his voice calm. "She was respectful. I confirmed her check-in. It was over an hour ago. I remember because she had a sketch pad sticking out of her bag." Camille turned to him and offered a small nod of appreciation. Quiet, but sincere. Leon looked from one face to another. "We'll issue a new ticket immediately. I'll begin the footage request myself. HR will be notified." Then he turned to Glenda. "Step away from the desk, now." Nova's sketch pad still peeked from the side pocket of her backpack. Jalen noticed it and offered a quiet nod of affirmation. Camille returned a look of quiet gratitude, small, sincere. Leon Rivera gave a brisk nod. "We'll get her reticketed. I'll start the footage request and loop in HR." He turned back to Glenda Marks. "Step away from the counter." Glenda opened her mouth as if to argue, but the weight of too many eyes, witnesses, passengers, her own reflection in the crowd, kept her silent. She stiffly backed away and disappeared behind the frosted glass door marked Customer Assistance. She didn't return. A new attendant quickly stepped in to help. She typed swiftly, printing a fresh boarding pass. Nova said nothing. She simply reached for her mother's hand and held on, tight, like letting go might drag her back into the moment she just escaped. Camille crouched beside her daughter and gently brushed a curl away from her cheek. "You okay to fly?" Nova nodded slowly, her voice faint. "Yeah, I just didn't like the way she looked at me. Like I was tricking her. Like I didn't belong." Camille didn't respond right away. She stood, looking out across the terminal. Beyond the wide glass, the plane waited on the tarmac, its nose angled confidently toward the morning light. "She didn't see you," Camille said finally. "She saw her fear, not your truth. That's her limitation, not yours." They walked together to the reboarding line. The new gate agent handed over the printed pass with a smile and said softly, "She's been upgraded to first class, Ms. Bennett. I'm deeply sorry." Camille accepted it with a neutral nod. Upgrades don't fix what's broken. What does fix it is remembering that the next time you see a kid standing alone, you check your bias before you check their ticket. The agent looked down, embarrassed, but nodded. Camille leaned down and kissed Nova's forehead. "Window seat. Like we planned." Nova gave a small smile. "I'll watch for the clouds." She walked slowly down the jet bridge, the ticket clutched gently in her hand. Behind them, the murmur at gate C-14 grew louder. No one spoke directly to Camille, but everyone was watching. And she didn't need their words. The wound had been made. It would heal, yes, but the scar would remain, even if invisible. A quiet memory etched deep. On board the plane, a flight attendant greeted Nova with a warm smile. "Welcome, sweetheart. We've been waiting for you." The pilot poked his head out of the cockpit with a grin. "Heard we've got a special guest today. Want to say hi before takeoff?" Nova blinked. "Really? Really? I'm a big fan of your mom." Nova turned back for a moment. Camille was still there, standing behind the terminal's tall glass wall. She hadn't moved. Her gaze wasn't on the plane, but on the gate desk, on the space where Glenda had stood, on the moment her daughter had been judged not for her lateness, not for her behavior, but simply for how she looked. Camille pulled out her phone, opened her notes app, and typed, "Gate C-14, Incident Report, Racial Profiling of Unaccompanied Minor Request Full Footage Review. Audio included initiate internal bias training for all frontline staff, mandatory evaluation, and retraining for gate agents." She paused, then typed, "This one's personal." Across the terminal, Leon stood near Jalen, their voices low, serious. Glenda had not returned, and wouldn't. HR would handle it now. Camille didn't care about the policies. Not in this moment. What mattered was the shift. The crack in the routine. The fact that someone had spoken, Jalen, the TSA officer, the woman in the waiting area. That was where real change began. Not with outrage, but with courage. On the plane, Nova sat by the window, finally opening her sketchpad for the first time that morning. Her pencil moved in slow arcs across the page. She drew a desk, a glass panel. Behind it, a person, ordinary, unnamed. No angry eyebrows, no exaggerated features, just a face. Across the glass, in neat block letters, she wrote, "Do better here." The plane began its ascent moments later. Clouds slipped beneath them, soft and blurred like drifting smoke. Nova leaned into the window, exhaled slowly, and smiled. The plane leveled out high above the clouds, somewhere over the Blue Pine Mountains. The captain's voice came through the speaker, calm and measured. "To your left, you'll see a faint line of the Blue Pine Range, cloaked in early mist." Nova didn't hear him. Not really. She sat curled in seat 2A, knees tucked beneath her, sketchpad open, pencil moving gently. She wasn't drawing mountains, or clouds, or planes. She drew a hallway, long, empty. At its end, a closed door. Behind the door, a small silhouette of a girl. No name, no face, just waiting. The memory of the gate still clung to her, not like a slap, but like a pressure, a silent weight behind the ribs, the kind you carry quietly, the kind you try not to name. Nova didn't want payback. She wasn't looking for someone to be fired or embarrassed. She just wanted to understand how someone could look at a quiet, polite 11-year-old and instantly decide she was trouble. On the tray table beside her, 2 glasses of water sat untouched, along with a neatly folded note. A flight attendant, one she hadn't seen before, older, with soft gray curls and a gentle smile, leaned down and whispered, "This is from the gate supervisor. He said it's meant for your mother." Nova took it, even though it wasn't addressed to her. Curiosity pulled her in. She unfolded the paper and read the tidy handwriting. "Ms. Bennett, we've initiated a full review of recent gate incidents across all terminals. I know an apology doesn't erase what happened, but we are committed to doing better." Leon Rivera Nova gave a faint smile. The note didn't fix everything, but it helped. Farther back in the cabin, Camille Bennett sat alone. No spotlight, no name badge, just a mother in slacks and a cardigan, sipping ginger tea and watching the clouds roll by. Not because they were beautiful, but because they gave her a space to breathe. She'd been here before. Not in the sky, but in this fight. Once upon a time, she had been the girl at the gate. Told to wait. Told to prove herself. Told she didn't fit the mold. She had built Sunport Airlines for this very reason, so girls like her daughter wouldn't have to carry that invisible weight. And yet, here they were. Camille opened her laptop, not for emails or meetings or press statements. She began to type something else entirely, a draft not for image, but for impact, for change that lasted after the plane landed. Up in first class, an older man across the aisle leaned over slightly. His voice was quiet, and his tone kind. "You kept real calm back there," he said to Nova. "Most kids your age, heck, most adults, would have kicked and screamed. I probably would have." Nova looked up, a little surprised. She wasn't sure if she was allowed to talk to other passengers, but there was something warm in the man's gaze. He wore a faded flannel shirt, jeans, and had a neatly trimmed white beard. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "My grandson's around your age. We talk a lot about this stuff. What to do when people make assumptions. It's not fair, but we try to get him ready for it." He paused, then added, "It's like you've got to be twice as patient just to be treated half as fair." Nova glanced down at her drawing again, then back at him. "My mom says that too, but she says we have to be twice as prepared. She tells me not to shrink." The man smiled, soft, a little sad. "She's right." They didn't speak much after that. They didn't need to. The cabin settled into a mid-flight hush, pages turning, earbuds clicking in, ice shifting gently in plastic cups. Nova finished her drawing and flipped to a new page. This time, she sketched the airport window. But instead of uncertainty, she drew her mother standing tall on the other side of the glass. Behind her, the silhouette of an airplane. Above her head, in neat capital letters, "See me first." Near the end of the flight, Camille walked up the aisle to check on her daughter. Nova looked up with a small grin. "Hi, Mom." "Hey, sweet girl. How's the view?" Nova pointed out the window. "I think that's the Hudson River." Camille leaned in, squinting. "Could be. You'll see a lot more once we're on the ground." Nova hesitated. "Do you think they'll fire her?" Camille slid into the seat beside her. "I don't know. Do you want them to?" Nova stared down at her sketch. "No," she said quietly. I want her to remember what she did. I want her to learn. People don't learn when you just erase them. They learn when they have to see what they missed before." Camille smiled. Just a little. "That's a powerful way to think." Nova shrugged. "It's how I feel." The plane dipped gently through the clouds as the crew began preparing for descent. Camille returned to her seat, and Nova leaned her forehead against the window. Below, the skyline of South Point City peeked through the mist, jagged, shining in the morning sun. It looked like a place where big dreams waited for small feet to arrive. The landing was smooth. more of a whisper than a touchdown. Inside the terminal, a staff member stood holding a sign that read, "Unaccompanied minor, Nova Bennett." Camille walked her daughter over and introduced herself. "She's heading to camp. Please make sure she's handed directly to the counselor staff on the other side." Nova turned and hugged her tightly. "You'll come back to pick me up?" "Wouldn't miss it. I love you. Love you more." Camille stepped back and watched her daughter walk away, backpack bouncing gently with each step, confidence beginning to bloom again in her stride. Nova's backpack bounced slightly with each confident step as she walked toward the terminal's exit. Head high, heart still processing, she didn't look back. Camille Bennett didn't follow right away. She stood still, rooted in place as waves of travelers rushed past her in every direction. Chatter, footsteps, luggage wheels humming against tile. Her gaze was steady, her expression unreadable. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. "Set a meeting for next week," she told her assistant on the line. "With Glenda Marks." There was a pause on the other end. "Should I bring in legal?" "No," Camille said. 10 minutes, that's all. I'm not looking to punish her. I want to see if she understands." That evening, from the 22nd floor of a high-rise overlooking downtown Vermont Hill, Camille sat at her desk, city lights blinking softly behind her. Her inbox was overflowing. Department updates, media alerts, internal flags. But she ignored them all for now. Instead, she reached into her handbag and pulled out the torn boarding pass. Still creased, still fragile. She placed it on the polished desk, right beside Nova's sketchpad, which had been accidentally left behind in the airport shuffle. Camille flipped through the pages. Softly drawn mountain ranges, gentle-eyed portraits, signs that said, "Do better and see me first," in confident block letters. One page made her pause. 2 hands, one adult, one child. The child's hand held a torn paper. The adult's hand extended a new one. No faces. Just a moment frozen in trust, in restoration. Camille stared at it for a long while. Not because it made her ache, but because it reminded her why she fought. Why she built this. Why it had to matter. 2 days later, Camille sat at the far end of a private conference table at Sunport Airlines headquarters. The boardroom was wrapped in glass, designed to feel open, but more often making people feel exposed. Across from her sat Glenda Marks. She looked different than she had at Gate C-14. Her hair was down, no blazer, no makeup. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. Camille had insisted, no attorneys, no HR reps, just 10 minutes, just one conversation, one human moment. The door clicked shut behind Camille's assistant. Silence settled. Camille didn't begin with anger. She didn't need to. She looked across the table, not as a CEO confronting an employee, but as a woman confronting a mirror of a world that hadn't changed fast enough. "I didn't ask you here to fire you," she said calmly. "That's not what this is." Glenda's eyes lifted slightly, surprised. "You didn't?" "No." Camille exhaled. "I asked for 10 minutes to ask if you understand what you did. Not what the manual says. Not what the protocol lists. What you did to my daughter. And why it matters." Glenda opened her mouth. Closed it again. She looked down at the tabletop. "I thought I was doing my job." "You weren't," Camille said, her tone still level. "You didn't check her name. You didn't scan her ticket. You didn't see a child in need of care. You saw a problem, a risk. And the only reason you second-guessed yourself was because you heard her last name." Glenda flinched, just slightly. "I didn't mean—" "That's not enough," Camille interrupted gently. "Not meaning to doesn't undo the harm. Not meaning to doesn't erase the way she looked at me, asking why someone could see her that way." The silence between them grew heavy. Outside the glass walls, planes glided across the tarmac in slow, mechanical precision. So small from this height, so ordinary. Finally, Glenda spoke. Her voice was lower now, stripped of all defensiveness. "I've been stationed at that gate almost 20 years. You see things. People trying to scam, fake tickets, fake stories. Over time, I guess. I stopped looking close. Camille nodded slowly. That's the problem. You stopped seeing people. You started seeing patterns, categories. And my daughter? She's 11. She stood in line. She held out her boarding pass. You didn't even give her a chance. Glenda's voice cracked a little. She reminded me of this one girl. Years ago. Tried to sneak on a plane. It was a mess. I guess I overcorrected. You didn't overcorrect, Camille replied softly. You overassumed. She paused, then leaned forward. And let's not pretend race didn't shape that assumption. Glenda's face went pale, but she didn't deny it. Didn't argue, didn't deflect. Camille let that moment linger. You have a file now, she said at last. There'll be retraining, bias workshops, a full evaluation. That's out of my hands. She rested her palms on the table, steady. What is in my hands is this. What you take from this moment. How you carry it forward. Glenda looked up again. Her eyes were glossy, but no tears fell. She was so calm, she whispered. I expected her to cry, to yell. But she just stood there, like she already knew no one would believe her. Camille's breath caught in her chest. Because that's the world we've built for girls like Nova. They sat for a moment longer in the quiet boardroom, words no longer needed. Then Camille stood. I'm not here for revenge, she said. I'm here because I believe people can change. But it begins with acknowledgement. You don't get to forget this. You carry it. And maybe the next time a little girl like Nova stands in front of you, you'll remember what it felt like to truly see her. Glenda Marks gave a slow nod. I will. Camille turned and walked out. She didn't shake hands. Not out of spite, but because some moments aren't meant to be tied up with closure. Some moments are meant to linger. Later that week, Camille listened to a voicemail on her phone. It was Nova's camp counselor. The woman's voice was light and glowing. She's thriving, she said. Gave a little talk at lunch today. About art, airports, and assumptions. I think she's going to change the world. Camille smiled as she replayed the message again, her fingers resting gently on the torn boarding pass still tucked into her desk drawer. That night, the camp payphone rang. Nova's voice buzzed with excitement. We built model cities today, she said. Mine had a sky bridge connecting every building. Get it? Sky bridge like the airline. Camille chuckled. I get it, Nova continued. Remember that lady from the airport? I do. I finished the drawing of her, the one behind the desk. I changed her face. She's not angry anymore, just confused. And I wrote something new on the window. What did you write? Camille asked. Learn to look again. Camille closed her eyes. That's beautiful. You think she'll ever see it? Maybe not the drawing, Camille said. But maybe one day. She'll see someone like you. And remember. And choose differently. 2 weeks later, Camille returned to South Point International to pick Nova up. When the escort led her through security, Nova walked with the same quiet strength she'd left with. Maybe stronger now. Camille noticed something on her daughter's wrist. A friendship bracelet, she said. Someone make that for you? Nova grinned. Nope, I made it for me. They walked side by side through the terminal, hand in hand, passing dozens of gates, hundreds of travelers, and thousands of split-second decisions. Who seems trustworthy? Who seems suspicious? Who looks like they belong? Camille didn't say it aloud, but she felt it in her bones. We still have so far to go. That evening, back home, Nova unpacked her things. Her sketchpad lay open on the living room table, its pages gently curling from travel. She showed Camille the last page. It was a drawing of a boarding gate. Above it, the sign read, All welcome below. People of every shape, size, and shade waited in line. Some smiled. Others looked nervous. And near the middle, A little girl with pink beads in her braids and a backpack on her shoulders held a boarding pass that was whole. Camille stared at it for a long time. Then she reached into the drawer and pulled out the torn ticket. Worn, creased, but still carrying its truth. She tucked it gently into the back of the sketchpad. Not to bury it, to keep it close. Because one day, Nova would grow up. She'd board planes again. She'd stand at new gates, in new cities, with a different kind of power in her step. And when she did, Camille wanted her to remember, not the pain, but the purpose. The importance of speaking, of seeing, of refusing to let silence decide who gets to fly. In a world where even the clouds can feel conditional, a little girl had taken back her seat. And this time, she wasn't flying alone.